Hi and welcome to another episode of the Ninja and the Gora. Today we are extremely fortunate to have Fabrizio Trifiro with us. Hi Fabrizio.
Hello, very pleased to be here.
It's great to have you on board. I guess to start off with, could you give us a little bit of a background of yourself, your work within the transnational education sector?
Absolutely. I've been working in the international education sector now for over 12 years. I've recently joined UK NARIC, and I can say something a bit more about the work of UK NARIC in a second. And so I joined UK NARIC in December. Before then, I was with the Quality Assurance Agency in the UK. I was leading on transnational education and international engagement with other agencies around transnational education. But also interestingly, before joining the QA and before actually being active in the quality assurance of transnational education, my interest was in globalization studies. So I used to research and teach on globalization studies, and in particular I was looking at the accountability of global organizations such as global corporations, intergovernmental organizations, non-governmental organizations, and see how they are accountable to the people they are affecting globally. So somehow my work around transnational education is very much transposing that interest in the accountability of global organizations to higher education. So we're talking about accountability of global higher education providers.
Yeah.
And that's right. And but as I was saying, in December, I've joined UK NARIC, and perhaps we can talk about how UK NARIC work, what kind of services it offers, and what kind of work it does around TNE.
Okay, so you mentioned UK NARIC, and we'll just get that to that in a second. Right now, I wanted to ask you a little bit about TNE as a whole. So in the last 2 decades, the TNE sector has gained a lot of momentum. What does data currently say about the growth and quality of the TNE sector at the moment?
Absolutely. Well, that's an interesting question. Now, with regard to growth in TNE, there is not comprehensive and consistent international data. So there's not an international repository of data about TNE. So it is difficult to give hard and definitive evidence, at least at a global level. Now, having said that, in the UK, the Higher Education Statistics Agency has, over the past 10 years or so, collected aggregate data about UK TNE. So I'm referring to UK TNE. And we can see from that data that UK TNE has been growing significantly over the years, although with slightly declining numbers over the past couple of years, due primarily, I believe, to consolidation in established markets, such as Malaysia, and a saturation also of those markets. But it is fair to say that TNE has, in particular in the recent years, has become an increasingly significant and strategic aspect of higher education provision internationally. Growing TNE provision is now included in main international education strategies of providers, but also sending and receiving countries' ministries, for example. So this means that the current context for TNE delivery is one of increasing competition between TNE providers offering different models of TNE provision, and increasing competition between sending countries and between receiving countries. So this is about the growth of TNE. While in terms of quality, again, I think it is not possible to refer to hard data about the quality of TNE, about its growing quality or its enhancement. One of the reasons being that I think it's fair to say that there is no systematic and robust way to measure the quality of TNE internationally. There's not a systematic and internationally understood way to quality assure TNE. Now, some receiving countries, such as Malaysia, or I should say locations, so including Hong Kong and Dubai, have over the years developed robust systems to regulate, monitor, in some occasions even quality assure transnational education. But many other host locations are still developing their own local regulatory frameworks for TNE, and are there saying that no sending country has measures in place which can be regarded as systematic and as capable to reassure international stakeholders of the quality of their outbound provision. And indeed, this is one of the main factors behind recurring lack of recognition of TNE qualifications. Now, having said that, in my personal experience of quality assurance TNE, and this observation here are limited to UK TNE, I can say that over the past 10, 20 years, TNE providers have strengthened significantly their capacity of developing, managing, delivering quality assurance TNE. TNE partnerships, for example, are now routinely overseen centrally by some central department. It wasn't the case at the beginning of TNE provision. They are now accountable to the higher decisional authorities of institutions, as well as being subject to regular monitoring and review. The capacity of TNE partners also has increased significantly over the years, as well as the capacity and the understanding that it is important to respond to the needs of the local context, and that and also we can see TNE award institutions learning from local delivery partners, which contribute to enhancing TNE, in my view. But the point I want to stress again is that despite this consideration, there is still lacking of external quality assurance. There is a lack of tools that can demonstrate in a reliable, independent, internationally understood and consistent way the quality of TNE provision. And this is indeed is the key rationale behind some of the recent work I've been doing with UK NARIC. For example, we launched our TNE quality benchmark scheme, which we may touch upon later on.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks so much. Could you give an overview of UK NARIC, the work it does, and also you spoke about the quality benchmark scheme. How is that useful for the host country, the students, and the partnering university?
Absolutely. Well, UK NARIC is the designated national agency responsible for providing expert advice, opinions on international education systems and qualifications and their comparability to the UK. It was established in 1997 when the UK signed the Lisbon Recognition Convention, and it is managed on behalf of government. Interestingly and significantly, UK NARIC, despite its name, is in fact an international membership organization with members from over 60 countries accessing its international comparison database, which is a database informing qualification recognition decisions internationally, as well as other services. So we offer, in brief, we offer services both to individual students and to institutions. To individual students, for example, we offer comparability statements of international qualifications against UK qualifications. We also assess English language capacity for work visa or citizenship or studies purposes, as well as offering other advice for professional and vocational qualifications recognition. For institutions, and this includes both education providers as well as government bodies or employers, we provide them with advice on international qualifications and educational systems, but also a number of qualifications benchmarking services. For example, an international institutions want to develop a foundation program, and they want to ensure that it is benchmarked at the right level against the UK framework. We do that for them. And recently, we have developed institutional level reviews mechanism such as the VET quality review accreditation system aimed at the vocational providers, and the TNE quality benchmark scheme, which is aimed exactly at reassuring international stakeholders about the quality and standards of transnational education. In relation to other TNE related work, and then I'll go back to the TNE QB service, we also offer advice. So the information that we provide not only helps institutions in their admission decision, in their recognition of qualifications, but also can help institutions in getting a better understanding of local regulatory environments when it comes to developing TNE operations. So it can inform their due diligence when it comes to understanding how things operate in a specific location. We also support providers in something which doesn't fall squarely within TNE. I'm referring to articulation and to PAP arrangements. And the way we support providers there is by benchmarking the qualifications of their local partners which they are articulating with. And we also drawing on the international base of a membership. We also can support partnership brokering. So we can also play this matchmaking function. And of course, we have launched the TNE quality benchmark scheme. And you were asking about to expand a bit on this scheme. And so the idea of the scheme really is that of offering a tool, a practical solution to the lack of reassurance about the quality of TNE. But the idea is to inform UK NARIC international engagement aimed at improving the international understanding of and confidence in TNE qualifications of demonstrated quality and standards. And this demonstrated is very important because the issue there is not with the quality, is not with a widespread perceived lack of quality of TNE, but it is with a lack of demonstration, lack of tools which can demonstrate the quality of TNE. Therefore, strengthening the trust, international trust towards TNE provision and facilitating the recognition of those qualifications. So what we do with this scheme is to provide that reassurance. And we do that through a peer review process aimed at giving this independent and external reassurance that a TNE operation, by TNE operations, I'm referring, for example, to a specific branch campus in Dubai or a partnership in Sri Lanka, for example. So giving reassurance that a TNE operation has the capacity to deliver TNE qualifications that are of comparable standards to those of similar qualifications offered back home, that provide a learning experience that is sufficient to enable students to achieve the expected learning outcomes. And I'm stressing sufficient because we recognize that it is impossible to guarantee an exactly comparable learning experience. It is about ensuring that students, in the context of different learning methods, different learning environments, ensuring that students are able to get the expected learning outcomes. And also looking at whether qualifications can account of the education, training, and skill needs of the local location of delivery. So this is, in a nutshell, what the TNE QB scheme does. It is based on peer reviews. Peer review teams are composed of international experts, often involving local reviewers. All TNE providers can be reviewed, so it is not aimed only at UK TNE. It is an international service. All TNE providers, regardless of the country of origin, can go through the scheme as long as they are recognized as bona fide providers in their own country. And you were asking about the benefits, and the benefits really revolves around this facilitated recognition of TNE qualifications through demonstrated quality and standards. So providers benefit through enhanced recognition of their qualifications, through enhanced reputations for their quality, which can also be used as a way to position themselves in an increasingly competitive market. Students it will benefit students to enhance global portability of their qualifications, as well as helping informing the choice of prospective students.
Right.
Again, in a context of increasing competition, where students now are facing choices of different TNE providers in their country. Those countries benefits through reassurance that foreign provision in their location is of good quality and it is responsive to the local needs, and also possibly informing their own regulatory and quality assurance activities. And this could also actually happen with sending countries' authorities. The TNE-QB scheme could inform sending countries' authorities and monitoring activity. So this is a bit of an overview of the work of UK NARIC and what we do around TNE and the TNE-QB scheme in particular.
If I could ask something related to this. So with the hosting country, do you work very closely with the local regulators as well then?
Absolutely. The idea of the scheme is that it shouldn't be seen in isolation. It is embedded in UK NARIC international engagement. For us, international cooperation around the implementation of the scheme is key, because this is success, and by success, I'm referring to the benefits that providers will accrue by going through the scheme in terms of enhanced recognition. So the success and the benefits of the scheme will only be realized with through cooperation with international bodies, with local authorities, because it is all about building trust on the scheme and therefore on the provision which is benchmarked by the scheme. In order to build that trust, you need to cooperate. Basically, this scheme, although it is offered by UK NARIC, should in the long term be seen as owned by the international community, trying as an international effort, really. And we have started conversation with a number of local regulators, for example, around implementing the scheme through local reviewers, being involved in our review teams. We are engaging with some key international credential evaluators, in particular where we have seen challenges in recognizing TNE qualifications, so that they be able to use our scheme to inform their TNE qualification recognition decisions.
Okay. Obviously, the outcome of the student when they're at university is to gain the degree. Now, the point of the degree is to make them more employable. So, as far as graduate employability is concerned, in what ways does the TNE quality benchmark help there?
Yeah. Well, really, it is. This is key. It's a very good question. Really, it is to improve recognition of their qualification. It is about opening up more employment opportunities, both in the private and the public sector, and internationally. It is about enhancing the portability, the global portability of qualifications through enhanced international understanding and confidence on those qualifications. It is really about global portability.
Right. Okay, so the next question is about assessment, and we've experienced during this lockdown period that students have, there's a massive move from online assessments to, from summative assessments to formative assessment as well. So it's a very tricky question about assessment in normal situations as well. So what measures does the TNE-QB take place to review, to ensure compatibility of assessments in terms of standards and quality and also fairness?
Absolutely. Well, as I hinted to before, one of the key things that the TNE-QB schemes look at is that TNE provision is of comparable standards to provision, similar provision offered back in the home country, or for distance learning provision across a model of distance learning provision. Now, key considerations in this context will be, for instance, looking at whether assessment requirements, assessment practices, policies for assessments are equivalent to those of the same or comparable programs delivered back home by the awarding institution. So, for example, what about assessment tasks For instance, what about marking systems, moderation practices, and when it is applicable, what about external examining? Are these applied consistently across locations, and are there ways to regularly monitor and review these policies and processes through processes which are as robust as similar reviews, similar monitoring that takes place back home. So this will be key considerations in order to ensure fairness, consistency of assessments across locations, in order to ensure that standards are retained. Now, another key related aspect when looking at the comparability of standards will also involve regular monitoring of TNE students' performance and outcomes, benchmarking them with the performance and outcomes of students of the same or similar programs delivered back home. So looking at student progression, student outcomes, where available, employment after graduations. These are all aspects, in fact, which are captured in the TNE international standards, which underpin the TNE quality benchmark peer reviews.
So you spoke about the peer-reviewed assessment of TNE provision against these standards. So these TNE international standards, they have been developed in alignment with international guidelines and reference points. Could you shed some light on the TNE international standards? What are they? How were they developed? And how do they help?
Absolutely. Well, that's right. TNE operations through the TNE quality benchmark schemes will be assessed against a set of international standards, which we refer to as TNE ISs, TNE International Standards. These have been developed by UK NARIC, working and consulting with the international stakeholders, including international providers, international experts, and regulators, in drawing on existing international reference points, such as, for example, the UNESCO, USCD guidelines for quality provision in cross-border higher education, the HINQAHI guidelines of good practices in quality assurance, as well as regional reference points, and also paying particular attention to the recently signed UNESCO Global Convention on the recognition of HE qualifications. So, and this is very important because as I explained, it is an international service. It is aimed at all TNE providers, so it is important that these standards are international. It is also important in order to get build that international trust, that the standards are internationally understood. So we see the international nature of the standards, again, key to underpin the robustness of the scheme. Now, the standards cover 5 overarching thematic areas. This include the development and management of TNE operations, standards of the program of study, quality of the student experience, alignment with local requirements, and information offered to students and the public. For each of these thematic areas, there are a number of indicators unpacking a bit how what is regarded as international good practice in these areas. I won't go into the details of the indicators. These are publicly available on our TNEQB website. But again, I want to stress how these are international standards, and how this is key to ensure that trust and recognition of benchmark TNE provision.
Does the quality benchmarking also include the student experience aspect? So apart from academics, do you provide quality assurance, provision for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A key aspect would be the student experience. And the idea, again, is not to look at comparable student experience. This is not the idea. The idea is to look at whether the support, the learning environment offered to TNE students support them in achieving the expected learning outcomes. For example, indicators around the quality of the student experience include that the learning resources and support services in place should give all students the opportunity to achieve the learning outcomes. That appropriate training and briefing and support are provided to those involved in managing the delivery of TNE provision. That feedback is regularly sought from TNE students, as well as that institutions have a duty of care toward their TNE students and ensure that those students who wish to complete a program can do so in the event of a closure or teach out. So the student experience is clearly an important aspect, by recognizing the diversity of the student experience, that different ways of delivering the student experience can support students to achieve the same learning outcomes and standards.
Excuse me a sec. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Obviously, for short term, certainly this has changed, and universities are now planning for the September term. So, with longer days and shortened terms. Hybrid models of delivery are also popular options. How's quality benchmarking scheme adapting to the situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the service that we have developed applies to all modes of delivery. So it is capable to capture different models and practices of teaching and learning. As I was saying, the standards are general and applicable to all modes of delivery. The difference will be in the way standards are met and the way that providers are capable to demonstrate they meet the standards through the specific method of delivery. So key here will be in the way the standards are implemented, in the way the standards are assessed. And for us, it is important to be able to rely on a wide range of expertise and a wide pool of experts with expertise in different types of TNE delivery. Because it will be key, for example, that peer review teams looking at distance learning delivery, online delivery, include peers who have expertise in the field, who are able to ask the right questions, are able to pursue the right lines of inquiry to see whether the international standards are implemented in the right way for the specific method of delivery. Mm-hmm. So any protracted changes to TNE delivery, which can be regarded as a consequence of COVID, can be naturally accommodated by the scheme. One of the consequences of the recent situation is that review visit might need to be carried out remotely for the time being. But this is, although it is always preferable to be present in loco, to get a better feel of the student experience in particular, but also to engage better with all the stakeholders, it is achievable. It is achievable to carry out review visits remotely. We've done that in the past. It is important to develop clear protocols for review visit meetings, for example, to ensure that students will be able to speak their mind freely, that there is no one behind the camera that may intimidate students. So as long as there are clear protocols, it will be possible to have remote review visits, but also we will be able to rely on local reviewers. So in these cases, it will be possible to have some form of blended review visits with the local reviewers presented in local and international reviewers connecting remotely.
Okay. Do you want to do that first?
No, yours.
Okay. What are the biggest lessons that we've learned from this situation?
It's difficult to. Yeah, sorry.
COVID-19 situation.
So I think it is probably a bit early to say what's going to happen in the future following COVID. We're still responding to it. I think it is fair to say, to no one's surprise, that TNE operations have learned over the past few months just as education institutions more generally, and just as many other sectors of many other industry sectors, that they can do many of the things they normally do remotely. So I'm not referring only to teaching and learning, but also to, in a specific case, also the quality assurance. So, for example, internal quality assurance relies on regular communication between partners, between the we award institutions and the local partner or the local delivery site. And these often can involve extensive international travel, such as, for example, for exam boards or for linked tutors visiting partners for training purposes, etc., etc. What providers have found out over this period is that this can successfully be carried out remotely, as well as, of course, aspects of teaching and learning. So what will be interesting to see is whether in the medium and the long term we will see a growth of distance learning and remote approach to all different aspects of education provisions as a consequence of the lessons learned during the COVID situation. One particular issue which is relevant here is recognition of distance learning and TNE qualifications more generally. In fact, many countries do not regularly recognize distance learning qualifications or TNE, but in response to the COVID situation, regulators and credential evaluators have responded to the crisis by temporarily relaxing the regulatory requirements. So it will be interesting to see whether these changes in regulation will be long-standing, whether and therefore facilitating the growth of distance learning or transnational education in the long term. So you would hope that, having had plenty of examples of institutions that have been able to continue to deliver quality education over months, could contribute to build a case for the more widespread acceptance of distance learning as well as TNE as a reliable method of delivery. And that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so do you think that if you've got a home campus that's delivering an online course, what kind of effect is that going to have on TNE? If they don't have to go to a campus support, as say, for example, in Dubai or Sri Lanka or Singapore?
Well, I think that is going to be a matter of student choice, and it has to do with the student experience, and it has to do also with the fact I stressed earlier on that our understanding is that what is key when it comes to any provision or different types of delivery is that the students are enabled to reach the standards. Yeah. Everything beyond that somehow is a matter of the student experience, is a matter of student expectation, is a choice of students, sometimes related also to fees. Perhaps students will continue to prefer face-to-face delivery where they can afford to pay for that, where exactly they're willing to travel for face-to-face delivery. They will continue to travel. That, I believe, will still be the preferred option. But with increased recognition and increased capacity in delivering TNE distance learning qualification, I think there will be more demand for that provision. Again, if the regulatory barriers for the recognition of distance learning qualifications will be addressed.
Okay, one final question. If we can have some advice and tips for those working in a TNE context. So you have obviously so much experience and insight on quality assurance on TNE and higher ed. So what advice can you give from your perspective to those educators for teaching and learning to improve it and to maintain quality?
Absolutely. Well, that's a good point. First of all is communication. communication at different levels. From the beginning, when you establish a TNE partnership, it's very important that, or TNE provision, could be a branch campus, that all the parties involved are on the same page and they understand each other's expectations. This applies more to partnerships, which is the most popular TNE models, at least for the UK, than to branch campuses. But it is a consideration also to be had with branch campuses. Often, in particular for TNE partnerships, language is also a barrier. So it is important to understand the language. It is important to understand the regulatory environments within which each institution, each partner operate, so as to ensure that the red lines, the reciprocal red lines, are traced, and there's not compromise to quality and standards from other parties. Regular communications, regular contact between the partners, between the mother institution and the branch campus is important. Now this communication is primarily, we can expect that it will be primarily conducted remotely, although physical presence is also preferable. Having visits to partners, to delivery sites from the awarding institution is important. It is about communicating, and this again somehow it can be more relevant to partnerships than branch campuses, but it's applicable to all. It is applicable to all TNE provision. For students, for the student experience, is very important to ensure that they are felt part of the home country, of the awarding body, that they are made feeling part of the awarding institution. So regular contact with students is important. Some TNE modules, unfortunately, are based on such as validation, are based on very little contact by part of the awarding institution. And students, when you talk to students, the feedback is we are happy with the degree, but we would like to have more contact with the home institutions, feeling a bit more part of that institution community. But they do understand that this is not part of the particular model of delivery. Also, because often they pay a bit less than other types of TNE provision.
Yeah,
and of course everything that I was referring to in terms of ensuring the standards, the comparability of standards, ensuring that the processes for monitoring and reviewing all aspects of education provision are as robust as those which are put in place at the home campus. That is absolutely key.
Yeah,
okay, I agree with that. Fabrizio, thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you and learning from you and hearing so much about your organisation. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Faisal. Thank you, Andy. Good to speak to you.